watching TMI, and today's edition we're looking at the Russia-Ukraine war. Nigeria's concerns about that. Basically, you understand the fact that according to what we even saw on the papers on the dailies, where the Nigerian government announced that evacuation of Nigerian citizens will begin tomorrow, Wednesday, for those who are interested in coming back to the country, Nigerians based in Ukraine. And the country happens to be a base for Nigerians seeking first degree in medicine. And so basically we're having that challenge where some have to be in shelters, running away from bombs, and from foot soldiers of the Russia country, and of course all the challenges as a result of the conflict. And we're gonna be having this discussion starting from my immediate left. I have a discussant, a social media influencer, a political economist, and he is Ibrahim Momo. Thanks for joining me, Ibrahim.
Thanks for having me. Good morning, Philip. Good morning, Nigerians.
And next to him is a lecturer at University of Benin, a political scientist in the Department of Political Science, and he is Neville Obakedo. Good to have you join me, Neville.
Thank you for having me. Good morning, viewers and listeners at home.
Well,
and
I'm your
welcome
host,
to the month of March.
Philip Omo Gupon, and we're going to be having all the conversation as regards the electoral law and the 84-clause saga. And the president recently signed that bill into law, but saying that the National Assembly should delete clause 84, which pays attention on disqualifying political appointees at any level, from being voting delegates or being voted for, by in congresses and conventions by any political parties for the purpose of being nominated as candidates of election. So that section rules that out. But before we delve closely into that, let's look at the Russia and Ukraine crisis. Basically, it's deepening. And just as the government of Russia did say earlier that, well, they're going to be withdrawing their troops. But interestingly, that didn't happen. We saw more efforts in them intensifying the war and all of this. What do you make of this, basically, as it concerns the Nigerian citizens in Ukraine? I start with you first, Ibrahim.
Thank you very much. I think that for Russia, the goals were a quick and very snap, takedown of message, just a message of, no nonsense message. But it has apparently dragged on much more, become more complicated than they had anticipated. And you can understand because in the current national system, several powerful countries, US particularly, with regards to maybe Vietnam or to Iraq or to Libya, and a couple of other nation states have willy-nilly, invaded and several times led to the ouster or death of the sitting president. And then even China did the same. Recently we see it in Hong Kong. The kind of very seismic changes that have occurred in the last 2 to 3 years. And of course, we look at what France is doing all over Africa. Most of our neighbors from Mauritania to Mali to Central African Republic, those Francophone countries. What evil, what level of harm France is doing to those countries. Literally changing. Look at the countries we have had coups in Africa. They are all French colonies, former French colonies. And with the policy of assimilation, they are still closely tied to the apron strings of Paris. So when Russia sees what other bigger nations, powerful nations are doing, perhaps it gets the mind that, of course, Russia is not so free, whether it is in South Ossetia or it's in Crimea. It has had its way, in the last couple of years, within the last 8-9 years, with those countries. And so it is what gave maybe Russia the impetus to think that they can also get away with what they're doing now. And don't forget the fact that Russia is not just a bad guy. There's some sense to the madness people are seeing. That is because Ukraine is not just any other, Ukraine is not Belarus, it's not Lithuania, it's not like all those, Georgia, it's not all those microstates. Ukraine is a major entity in terms of population, in terms of nuclear capability. You know, the Chernobyl nuclear disaster occurred right in Ukraine. You know, it's a country of some modicum of, strength or capability. And so, if it's allowed to join NATO, essentially, it will create a very difficult challenge for
Russia.
For Russia, at the outset, the U.S. and Russia exchanged letters. Russia requesting that the U.S. put in writing guarantees that Ukraine would not be allowed to become a member of NATO, which is the rival security apparatus to the Warsaw Pact.
But it's a sovereign country, so it is at liberty to be member.
If we go by the Monroe Doctrine of the U.S., if another country's politics have direct implication on the interests and national security of the U.S., that country's policies, that country cannot be allowed to have its way.
To have its way as a member of NATO? Is that what
for example, because, make no mistake about it.
Okay.
There is a concept of the head trigger mechanism, which means that if you attack any NATO country, the entire NATO countries will come together and retaliate. Or if there's a fight between, or a war between maybe Russia and maybe the US or Germany or France or that NATO country, the implication of the head trigger mechanism is the fact that you are not fighting one country anymore. It's going to be every of the NATO countries. The NATO combined is about the most powerful security superstructure in the world.
Wow.
And there's no way. We have to understand that no country who understands its thoughts will accept that kind of incursion into its. Because it's really that Russia has every reason to feel threatened by, the rapprochement between NATO and Ukraine. Russia has the right to has every reason to be apprehensive, and that is why you are saying that they sought that guarantee and they didn't get it. And then you are saying, lastly, that in the move for negotiation, Ukraine is saying that they are ready to discuss its neutrality with regards to NATO, because they understand the implications.
Yeah. Okay, let's get your thoughts on this, Neville Obakedo, because Nigerians are concerned about this, mainly looking at the need to really put all of this to rest as it pertains to our citizens in the country.
Okay, let me just start by talking about the relationship between nation states in international politics and international relations. Is determined by the nation's national interest, which can be broken down into primary interest, secondary interest, and tertiary interest. The primary interest within the context of national interest is the interest of the survivor of the state, of a state like Nigeria. Nigerian national interest, primary national interest, core interest should be the survivor of Nigeria, including the citizens of Nigeria. Because if the citizens of Nigeria are not secured, then Nigeria is not secured. Now, it includes the security of Nigerians outside. So, in the build-up to this war, I'm coming back to that issue of the war.
All right.
And what led to it. The government of the United States and some European countries, they call on their citizens to return home from Russia, from Ukraine, because it is the core interest of those nations to protect their citizens wherever they are in the world.
Of course, yes.
I was
just as it's also the core interest of the Nigerian government to protect its citizens.
Yes, I was waiting
because
for Nigeria.
I think that's where you are going.
Yes, I was waiting for the Nigerian government to issue a statement to Nigerians and Ukraine in particular, because this war was going to be an unjust and unfair war. Now, they did not. They waited for the war to start, and now we have displaced persons as a result of the war. Before, Nigeria will now be sending letters to Nigeria embassy in Poland, Nigeria embassy in Hungary, Nigeria embassy in whatever, wherever they are around that axis, that they should come home, they want to evacuate them. Now, it shows that those who are piloting the affairs of this nation, they don't understand international politics and the national interest, which is the core interest of protecting the citizens of Nigeria. They don't understand. If they understand it, anywhere there are conflicts in the world, as America will issue statement calling on their people to return, of those who are willing, as Britain will be calling on their citizens to return from the crisis region or zone to return home, Nigeria is supposed to have done that. Now, Nigeria has started, and when you see video clips of what is happening at the borders, when Nigeria and other Africans want to cross to either Poland, to Moldova, to Hungary, to other countries, to Romania, to Slovakia, you will see that there's element of racism there. And that brings to question the determination of African leaders, including Nigerian leaders, to do everything to build their country, to develop their country. Just now when we were making to talk about Nigeria as going to Ukraine for medical studies, when we have how many medical schools in Nigeria, and we have trained medical experts that have even made their marks in Saudi Arabia, in Canada, United States, and other parts of the world. Here we are, Nigerians are living here. It shows that the educational sector, the attachment, the importance, and the contribution that the government was supposed to make to it, they failed to do so. So right now, the lives of Nigerians in Ukraine and Russia is put in jeopardy. And I use this media to call on Nigerian government to learn and be swift in reacting to issues like this, whether it is Nigerians that have issues in Ghana, in South Africa, and other parts of the world. Okay. Now let's come to the issue of Russia and Ukraine. The international system as it is, just like the human body system. The human body system is a complex system. If you go back to your elementary biology, you are going to see that they'll be talking about Mr. Niger, talking about irritability, respiration, reproduction, excretion, and so on. When they work together, you see that there is stability of the human body. If they are no longer working together, you will now have crisis and conflict within the human body. Now take it to the family level. You see families today, a man and woman with a husband and wife, one wife, and maybe 3 or 4 children. When you get there, you will see that there are interests. And the stability and the unity that the family is supposed to have, they don't have it. Because either the mother is supporting 2 children and the father is supporting 1, or something like that. And then you now take it to community, from there you now take it to state. And then you now take it to heterogeneous society like the world. So we have, the world is complex but interdependent, and you have various interests. Looking at it from the power theory, or you look at it from what we call, I'm trying to remember the way Small-Getter, professor of international politics, put it. But nation states, whether Russia, whether the United States, they pursue their own national interest. That national interest could be the interest of one person, one president. It could be the interest of a group of people, the elite, or governing elite, or presiding elite. It could be the interest of groups within the public bureaucracies of that country, especially the Ministry of External Affairs, and so on. Now, it is all this kind of conflict and crisis that we are seeing manifesting. And within that power system, or power theory, nations pursue their national interests, their self-help, survival, and they have the tendency to be aggressive. So, if you go back to what happened between America and the default USSR, when I talk of default, I'm talking of the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics. Yeah. Yes. Now, about 15 republics that came together to form the USSR of those days. Now, because of American influence, marketing capitalism and democracy, Russia, the strong Russia then, the USSR then, Soviet Union then, collapsed. And then, after the collapse, about 15 countries now emerged, including Ukraine. including Lithuania, including Azerbaijan, including Uzbekistan, including Georgia, and so on, including this Russia. Now, because of the population, the landmass, and the deposit of military arsenal in Russia, Russia still want to be taking us back to the Cold War era, where there was struggle between America and the USSR. Now, when Boris Yeltsin became the president of of Russia, the Russian Federation, the first thing that he did was to create a commonwealth of independent states, where all these states that were under the fourth USSR can be meeting and be relating, military-wise, economic-wise, social-wise, and so on. But when Vladimir Putin came, he does not want to go back to that kind of commonwealth arrangement. He wants to use force and assert the same authority and influence that the fourth USSR used to have. Instead of trying to be diplomatic in relating with those countries and lure them, in quote, into a military alliance that NATO cannot penetrate, that the European Union cannot penetrate, he's using force, causing division in various countries. If you go to the Republic of Chechnya in the old USSR, you will see what Putin did in the destruction of that country. If you go to Georgia just now, you will see that there was a war around 2008 against Georgia. After the war, when Russia did not succeed in removing the president, whether his name is Alexander Lukashenko, what he now did was to now cause breakaway republics within the country. The Republic of Abkhazia. He sponsored people to break away and name that republic and recognize the republic. He sponsored another republic and call it Ossetia within the same country of Georgia. The same thing has done in Ukraine by creating Donetsk Republic and Luhansk Republic within Ukraine. After, first of all, annexing another region, which is Crimea. Why is Russia doing this? Russia is doing this just like America. When he made mention of the Monroe Doctrine just now, America tried to lure Organization of American States into one body and then be using them to ensure that there's no other country that come and have influence in the area that America is having as sphere of influence.
Selfish gains?
Yes. Now,
selfish measures.
Now,
national interest.
When in 1962, this defunct USSR that Russia is trying to represent now came to want to install missiles in Cuba. You saw that American president then, J.F. Kennedy, threatening war, and the negotiations that took place between Nikita Khrushchev, the leader of the USSR then, and the American president led to the withdrawal of those military arsenal from Cuba. Now, it's like history is trying to repeat itself, but just that the managers of the conflict right now, especially Vladimir Putin, is trying to go the way that some other powerful nations went that led to their destruction after the world wars that followed such military ambition.
Okay.
Now, you look at America is trying to carry all those nations that are into alliance with America, carry them along, supporting them with aid and the rest of them. If Russia want to do the same thing, instead of sponsoring crisis in countries that they perceive to be having alliances with America, whether real or imagined, it's a question of also trying to look for a way to draw them closer and form a strong alliance. Right now, what Putin is trying to do is try to rally North Korea and China so that we go back to a bipolar world, America versus Russia, with others supporting. But we have gone beyond that level. Try to remake the world order now, to make it America and Russia. It's no longer possible because we have other strong nations. China is there, trying to say that America should not come and be flexing the Pacific Ocean and so on. And so we now have what we call a multipolar world.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that very exhaustive analysis. I allowed it to stay because we really needed to get much information, about that, and the viewers need to really internalize this. Big thanks, Neville. But you are a political economist, underlying economist, and we look at the challenge where this intensified war you know, is bringing about shortage in wheat. And Russia seems to be a major supplier in that. And then we also have a global energy price spike, you know. And don't forget again, Nigeria happens to revert to the fair subsidy arrangement, where we have about 3 trillion, you know, to pay for a subsidy for 1 year. Now, there's this challenge that with this intensified war, we're going to be having spike, or has already been put by global markets, you know, indices. Where does this put Nigeria in terms of curtailing this challenge that may arise from the war?
Well, you see, the first thing is that we live in an intertwined, interrelated international system. What happens in one country, in one end of the world, has reverberating effect in several other countries all over the world. And again, in the globalized world like the one we are now, where trade is not local, where business is done across borders, where, for example, you mentioned wheat. Wheat is the 2 major suppliers of wheat in the world. Number 1 is Ukraine. Number 2 is Russia.
It's Russia, okay.
Interestingly, so it means
and these 2 countries are involved in this war.
Yeah, the epicenter of the current crisis. So you're going to expect that there will be a disruption in global supply of wheat, and that would, of course, lead to one malnourishment or undernourishment of except for countries who have strategic reserves, you know, of wheat. You're going to have global disruptions in terms of supply, and then, of course, with the attendant inflation in the cost of this. And then, of course, you will look at the issue of Russia being not a member of OPEC, but by far the second largest country that has the second largest reserve of crude oil.
Wow.
You know, where that country is at war, you are going to expect that there will be a disruption in the global flow of the core energy source, which is crude, you know, in the world. And that is what we are seeing: crude and then natural gas. That's what's happening in the world today. And then a third point to add regarding, you know, the implication of this war is the fact that we are seeing that much funds that could have been better used is now being better used for other forms of, you know, ends that can be productive. It's not being put to work. In fact, there was a time when the current U.S. Secretary General came to office, the very first year, he said, war is overfunded. War. The quantum of funds countries are putting in towards warfare, it's unimaginable.
It's alarming, and at the detriment of capital projects.
You know, of core needs. About a third of the world is in hunger, and then you are investing so much in war. Now, what you are saying is that the NATO countries are pumping different categories of weapon and military hardware into Ukraine. These are not cheap. They come at a cost. Russia, of course, is also expending much. And there's an opportunity cost for each of these things. And what you see in a country like Nigeria, for example, is that you might think that the people might think that there's a reason to smile because, of course, for the first time in a long while, the price of oil is hovering around $100 per barrel. That should have been good news. But it isn't.
That should have been good news.
It should have been, but it isn't.
But it isn't.
Because first, Nigeria is a country, apart from being a net exporter of crude oil, it's also a net importer of refined petroleum products.
That's it.
So an increase in the price in the price of a barrel of crude oil translated to an increased cost.
Yes, even refining
of refined petroleum products.
Yes.
Because we are importing.
Yes, we are importing.
You know, so whereas it could have been something to smile about, because Nigeria has been run since the Jonathan administration, the 6 years Jonathan was in power, and of course the 7 years, almost 7 years, Buhari has been in power. Nigeria has been running a very huge deficit budgeting. In fact, part of our recurrent expenditure is from loans, from borrowings.
Wow.
In the last 2021 election, about 96% of our revenue went into debt servicing. That kind of economy cannot be celebrating with an increased price of crude oil, which is the reason being that we are actually running on deficit budget. We are borrowing to fund our economy. And if the costs The cost, it should have been a plus. It's an irony that we are a net exporter of crude oil. So when the price of crude oil goes up, it should be a plus.
It should be a plus.
But because we are not refining locally, we are actually suffering from the vagaries of the international market. Those increased prices comes back as increased cost for Nigerians. And
okay, the aspect of not refining locally, I think this brings us to the aspect of setting up modular refineries and all that, giving license and all that. But what do you think should be the stopgap? Because the challenge of even if we are to take a quick fix it, you know, will also affect the consumption, you know, because we won't have the regular, you know, volumes that Nigerians need daily. So where do you think Nigeria should come in? The government should come in?
I think there are two things that Nigeria can do, and the country can do, and fix this mess. The first thing is that we need to secure our borders. The Nigerian borders are too porous. Our local businessmen, because Nigeria, even in the high cost we are paying, 165 to 220 naira, it's still the cheapest in the entire West Africa.
Okay, yeah,
that amount per liter is still the cheapest in the entire West Africa. So what our businessmen do is that when they get this crude at a very reduced rate,
they take it out.
Take it out of the country. So the first thing our country can do is to secure our border. The figures we are hearing is that Nigeria consumes about 61 million liters.
You know, daily.
Daily. People might doubt those figures. The reality is that what NNPC is pumping to the market is about 51 million liters, 55 million liters. But
you mean the reality?
Yeah, you know, what NNPC is pumping
yes,
out,
as being
but
reported.
what is being consumed within Nigeria may not be up to maybe more than 40 million liters. So now, about a third of what is being pumped out from NNPC's depot
is taken out of the country.
So again, that one even comes at the businessmen are making more money, you know. So the first thing we can do is to secure our border. The second thing I think Nigeria can do is without that, either the government, and I doubt the ability to, either the government fixes our refineries. Nigeria has the refining capacity to cater for 51 million liters. We have a refining capability of 440,000 barrels per day. That should cover more than 51 million liters, and even have to import. But because our refineries are not working, and if you see the kind of money that's been pumped into it year in, year out
for turnaround maintenance,
what government can simply do, and which is where NUPENG should wake up, and Pegasus should wake up, is that it can lease out, it can even sell out those refineries. You give mandates, because it appears to be a cesspool for corruption. It appears to be an avenue for corruptly enriching the NNPC and those in the Ministry of Petroleum Resources.
I think that's what the Petroleum Industry Act seemed to really
but it has been suspended.
Yes, it has been suspended, yes. Over the fuel subsidy arrangement.
You know, so if we truly implement, then we'll be home and dry. But we're not implementing, that's the challenge.
Thank you. I want your thoughts on this, what he just said, and also look at what you also said concerning Nigeria government not being proactive, but rather being reactive. Now, we have these announcement made by the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Geoffrey Oyema, that starting tomorrow, airpeace will be lifting Nigerians who are really stranded and willing to come back home. We have about 2,000 figure, you know, as those that will be lifted tomorrow. What do you make of this, Nebel?
First and foremost, let me talk about the issue of airlifting Nigerians. And they said it's airpeace that is going to...
Airpeace, yeah.
Yes. Whether the airpeace airline is having the license to fly people from Europe, direct flight from Europe, we don't know. So when the minister is making that kind of statement, we need to go and find out whether that statement is rooted in law. When I say in law, because there are rules that guide the airspace, and there are aircraft that are qualified to travel from one part of the continent, from one part of the world to another.
But in emergency situations, can't arrangements be made in that regard, or can't some policies or hard rules be suspended?
Well, that will not be left for those that govern the international airspace.
Yeah.
Well, that is by the way. And as I've said earlier, the Nigerian government should learn from what other advanced nations, because when we are talking about democracy, for instance, we say we are practicing democracy, America kind of democracy. When we are talking of economy, they say we are practicing a capitalist economy and all the rest of them. But the practicality of all of this, we don't have them. And that leads me to the issue of state capture. That what Ibrahim was trying to say just now. You can just subsume everything under what we call state capture. The Nigerian state has been captured by a group of people that we can refer to as the governing elite. This governing elite, they are scattered across the spectrum of our society. In the military, you see them. In politics, you see them. In religious circles, you see them. In the manufacturing sector, you see them. In business, you see them. And in the traditional circle, you see them. So they just work together.
What about in the masses circle?
In the masses circle, apart from those who are recruited from the masses into the elite class, the masses are just there, like the leaders are the elite, and the led are the masses. And because the elite, they are organized, they may have differences that may threaten their place in the system. They have a way of meeting, negotiation, political intrigue, and the rest of them. Before you know what's happening, they come together. But the masses are so unorganized. And because they are so unorganized, they don't even know their interest. And if they see their interest, they don't know how to promote it because they don't know it.
But that's where pressure groups come in.
Yeah,
that's where unions come in.
When I talk about,
that's where civil society organizations come in. Human rights activists come in.
That was why I said just now that from the masses, people are recruited. Are you getting it? If you go and study the issue of civil society organizations in Nigeria, you discover that some of the people were spearheading civil society some years ago. By the time they were now recruited into the political, into the governing elite or presiding elite, they leave the masses of the civil society.
They seem to forget what they used to be.
Yes. So right now, we are having a very big problem. The problem of Nigeria today, as we see it, is not just a problem of we have crude oil, we export it. Who are the people exporting it? The people who have captured the state. They have the license to export it. Who are the people bringing the refined product? The same people who have captured the state. And so when we are talking about,
when you say capture the state, I don't understand, because the state
when we say state capture, let me explain it to you.
Okay.
This is Nigeria now. Nigeria is divided into 36 states, 774 local government. Now, in each state, you have people that cause the shot. They have link with Abuja in each of the states. These are the people that determines what happens at the state level with their connection in Abuja. It is on there you see that people are appointed chairman this of so body, or chairman of this, of governing council of this, chairman of board of this, chairman of board of that, across the country. It is on there you see people are appointed as ambassador, this to that country, to this country. And it is from there appointments are made, minister, that, director general, this and that.
So they are taking over structures?
Yes. That is to say that the Nigeria state is in their hands.
Oh, yes.
Even though you see Nigeria as a country, the influence that determines who gets what, when and how the Nigeria state is in the hands of these people. So you just say state capture to explain that the state, as big as it is, 36 states and several others, is in the hands of very few people.
That's a term in political science.
Yes. So, as we are talking about state capture, there is state capture everywhere, even in the United States, in Britain.
Wow.
But the people who capture the state, they want the state to be a dominant force, domestically and externally. When you hear that Britain was doing colonialism, going from one part of the world, conquering people, France going from one part of the world, conquering people, nation, and establishing colonial rule, it was because of state capture. It benefited a group of people. Now, at the end, or a corollary of state capture should be nation building, like Nigeria. Nigeria is made up of different nations. We have the Edo nation, the Shekiri nation, Uropo nation, Igbo nation, and the rest of them. There are people that are now within the circle of those who captured the state. They're supposed to build their people. That building is missing. Now, another corollary of a state capture and the trajectory of a state that want to make impact is what we call state building. As you move from the heterogeneous nature of the state and the building that goes on within the nations that make up the state. You now have to build the state. How do you build the state? You build the state by ensuring that those that will be recruited to manage the affairs of the state, that those that have the interest of building the nation and building the state with a developmental agenda. Any country where that state building, nation building, and developmental agenda is missing, the nation will be like Nigeria. The nation will be like Mali. The nation will be like Burkina Faso. The nation will be like every other country that you are seeing crisis today, and people try to politicize the crisis, because there are merchants, conflict and crisis merchants, who benefit from the process of the crisis that the nation faces. So we are talking of crisis in the petroleum sector. There are people within the governing class who are benefiting from the crisis. We are talking of crisis of insecurity in Nigeria right now. There are people within this they are also benefiting from the crisis of insecurity.
Now want to sustain the crisis.
Yes, these are the issues that we are having, and unless the state is deconstructed and all these people have been recruited to that level of the state management, their place in the system is deconstructed.
Okay.
And they are eliminated not by killing, but by reducing their influence on the political process.
Okay.
The economy and the politics will still be what will be like what the Yoruba call kete or so.
Okay. Thank you very much. Well, we are expecting the first batch tomorrow, and modalities are being put in place by the federal government to bring about those. So what's your urge? What are your nudges for the government in having a seamless evacuation of those who are interested to come back? But mind you, some basically will want to come back.
Well, I think that the first mistake our government made is in delaying the arrangement or the processing of a lot of Nigerians leave Nigeria for foreign land without proper documentation. And of course, when they get to those countries where Nigeria have diplomatic relations, they don't also register themselves as Nigerians. It's only when crises occur like this, as they often do in the international system, that's why you now see people trying to scramble, and then they insult the Nigerian embassies in those countries, for not responding to them adequately. But I think that if that being the case, we live in a globalized world. You don't even have to be a president or a foreign affairs minister to realize that there was a war imminent in Ukraine.
Okay.
About 2-3 weeks ago, we already knew that something was fishing.
So that would have been a time to take decisions.
And then again, you look at the fact that what I would like to note, upon election in countries like the US, in the UK, in the UK, around the EU, in major countries, in Canada, those countries who understand, those developed countries, the G20, put it that way. Upon election, the first appointments that serious countries that understand their standing in global affairs do is to appoint what you can call the foreign affairs minister in the case of Nigeria, or a foreign secretary in the case of the UK, or a secretary of state in the US. Because power, or enunciating your interest or power as a country starts with how you relate to the international, outside your border, with the international community, international system.
Yes.
And your activity in the international system is supposed to help to promote or achieve your core national interest, what you want to achieve as a state. So it is intricately intertwined.
Okay.
A country's national interest and its foreign policy. And so when you see a situation whereby something like this happening in Ukraine, and Nigerians I've seen on BBC, on CNN, major international media houses, that Nigerian statement condemning, the stoppage of or blockade of people want to leave Ukraine across the Hungarian Romanian and Polish borders. So
yes.
I've seen that statement across international media.
But again, the federal government did say that Nigerians seeking to, flee from Ukraine can access Romania and Hungary because the countries are given visa-free access.
The initial point was Poland. It is because of the failure or the inability of those. That's why they're not bringing other Romania. Initially, the first statement, because I've followed the Foreign Affairs Ministry and the NIDCOM, Nigerian Diaspora Commission. their dispatches, their press releases.
Okay.
And all initially was Poland. And when we saw the pictures of what the Polish border, the Ukrainian border officials are doing in preventing from,
yes.
It was then, okay, Hungary and Romania came up. And I think that whatever the case, for me, I think it is better late than never. But again, it all brings out the point that no country develops beyond the conscious national interest consciousness of its people. No country develops beyond the feeling of the nationalism ethos of its citizenry. It means that no matter how much we think we have the funds to run around the world, we have no country but Nigeria, and it is in our best interest to fix Nigeria. What it tells me is that, because you see a lot of youth today, with all due respect to them, it's okay to travel. A lot of people are talking down their country and trying to seek asylum, literally, economic asylum in several countries of the world. Literally, you are spending so much to go through the land borders of Libya, and then you are captured. You see the gory stories they have to tell. These people, with all these efforts they are putting, the kind of suffering they have, if they invested a fraction of that in their country, things will change. I don't accept that the kind of greatness that Nigeria is what is possible with Nigeria. We are seeing a situation whereby over time we are still talking about. Look at what I listened recently. I watched recently the MKO Abiola's campaign. MKO Kingibe Abiola. You know, if you watch out those issues he raised in 1993 during his campaign, are they not still very prevalent today? These are the very issues. Is it water? Is it light? Is it poverty? You know, hunger. These core issues, basic issues, rudimentary issues, are still the issues plaguing Nigeria some 20 or 30 years after 1993. We are still where we are. Almost 30 years after, we are still where we are. So I'm saying that as a country, the government has an obligation to be proactive in, first of all, identifying national interests and protecting them or achieving them with its international relations or foreign policy. And then our people have an obligation to ensure that we get the right people in offices so that they can now do the best thing for us.
Okay. I want to believe you concur with all that because you've already corroborated what he said. But what do you have to say in that before we go to the next topic?
What I have to say is that Nigerians should demand accountability from their leaders. And Nigerians should ensure that the recruitment process, they should not be carried away by the money they give during campaigns and the money they give on election day. At the polling units or after voting, you go to one corner and go and collect 5,000, 2,000 as the case may be. Nigeria should be concerned about the recruitment process. In every community, the people in that community knows their people. They know who's who. They know those who have the interest of they know those who are straightforward. But because of this issue of godfatherism, state capture, and everything that go with it, more often than not, it is not the best that have the interest of the people at hand that are elected to represent the people, whether councillorship election, local government election, like chairmanship election, House of Assembly election, National Assembly election, and even governorship election. In that case, you cannot wipe out poverty. Because a man, for example, that want to be governor of Edo State should know Edo State. As I'm sitting here, if I want to be governor of Edo State, I will summarize Edo State for you. Local government by local government, word by word. I will start from Akoko Edo and end with Ovia Southwest and Ovia Northeast. I will tell you of the communities and what I know they need because I have personally visited those places.
Okay.
Not because of election, but because of research activities. Okay. So I now know what they need.
Okay.
And so if I now become governor, for instance, I also know my friends, I know my political associates that can help me to achieve the purpose of becoming the governor.
Okay.
And so the leaders in my party, I will let them know that if you want to bring somebody for me, these are the people that I know in your area you can bring for me. whatever arrangement you want to make to be getting something from them at the end of the month, that is your business. Okay. But if I have anything to also give political leaders because of the way that Nigeria politics is configured, I will still give.
Okay.
So that is by the way.
Thank you.
Yeah.
By the way, do you have another one to say? Because what we should be talking about now is the electoral law. My team went ahead of me to really put that topic on the screen, as you can see. Now I'm starting with you again, Nebilo Bagado. We have this issue where the clause 84, has been said by President Muhammadu Buhari that the National Assembly should delete, from the Electoral Act. And looking at that, the section which borders on political appointees being disqualified as voting delegates and being voted for, in congresses, in conventions by any political party for the purpose of being nominated for election. And what the section also says is that for them to enjoy that, they should either resign their political appointment or withdraw or retire 30 days before election. But the president is saying that that wouldn't augur well, because we have the section 40, section 42 of the 1999 amended constitution, that gives credence to these political appointees to enjoy these largesse. So what do you have to say, Nebe?
You see, just now, before we came to this issue, we're talking about the recruitment process into political leadership, which now also determine the appointment into other aspects of the national life of a country. Now, when there is a dispute between the three organs of government, it is the Supreme Court that interprets the dispute and settles it. I watched Mr. President when he was going to accede to the electoral bill with his long speech. The speech was unnecessary. Why did I say the speech was unnecessary? Number one, the president has an aide to the National Assembly. Yes. While they were preparing the electoral bill for the president assent, they're supposed to have brought a draft for the president to look at it and make his own correction. Okay. When I say correction, like this issue, before yes, like this issue that had to do with
before the passing,
constitutional,
okay,
before the passing,
yes, what have to do with the constitution, that would be behind the scene arrangement. Yeah. Are you getting it? What have to do with constitutionality? We have lawyers, we have all kinds of professionals in the National Assembly. They were supposed to have looked at what they were going to sign. They signed it. Both the Senate President and the House of Rep Speaker, they signed the bill before bringing it to the President to accept his own signature on it, to make it an act. Now, they did not, they failed to look at it and see that they were offended. There was a section in the electoral bill.
So what's the implication of that?
The implication is that the President will not have signed by making a statement that there's a section in this
that should be deleted.
Yeah, that should be deleted. And yet he signed it.
And yet he signed.
He signed it without putting it in the column of signature. Okay, but I'm signing it subject to the deletion of that section. Of section. So because it violates the constitution.
Is it not possible that that was what he signed?
No, that was not what he signed. It like that.
Okay, let's have your take on this, Ibrahim.
Well, I think that the president was in a tight corner.
Wow.
And that's because, that was not the first time the president refused to sign the bill. About a month before. In fact, we discussed that on
this report, yes.
With President signed. And we found out that if he had done that, look at what INEC has released now in terms of timetable, that by May, June, party primaries would have been conducted.
Wow.
This is March.
So it's possible he already signed it because of the closed market
was not there.
That INEC was given.
The president had no the room for him not to append signature, because this election that is going to hold in February 2023, that is less than a year from now.
And it's a big one.
A general election for that matter. And of course, we also have some 2 elections coming up. The Osun and the Ekiti State election. They are holding this year. You know, and all of them are going to be applied. And then,
yes.
And then somehow, this particular electoral act, or law as it is now, has suffered from a lot of disinformation. Oftentimes, something will just come up, and that is the only thing people are talking about. And there are so many good things in the bill that people don't even think. These are what we are seeing in the fall, are just interplay between governors and senators and House of Rep members. That is what is actually the core of the issue, and the president is at the middle. You know, he doesn't want to fight with the governors or with the National Assembly. That is what is at the middle. Initially, they came up with the first one that was rejected was that only by direct primaries. Where is that done? Where is that done? But the goal was that so the governor will not sit down in his bedroom and determine who becomes who. It happened in Zamfara and Kaduna states. The senators opposed the sitting governors. Abdulaziz Yari in Zamfara, and then Kaduna. Shehu Sani was a senator. Which other senator? I've forgotten one other popular senator too.
Okay.
Senator Hunkuyi too. But they opposed the sitting governor of Kaduna State, Nasser Rufai, and they were removed. The governor singularly determined that. In the case of Zamfara, in fact, the APC suffered as a result. The former governor Abdulaziz Yari removed all 3 senators and replaced them with his own candidate in a way that didn't conform with INEC regulations in terms of conduct of primaries. They went on, while the court case was still dragging, they went on to hold elections, and the APC cleared everything from the governor to the senators, the House of Assembly. They won everything.
So that's what the National Assembly is saying to be checking.
But the Supreme Court ruled against them, and the APC lost everything in Zamfara State. So it is that inner fighting, infighting between the National Assembly and the executive in the states. That's what is playing out. Again, in the issue of Section 84, Subsection 10, you are seeing that, which the President has spoken to. In many states, like in Richard Skrocha's Imo State, he appointed about 10,000 aides. Such that he could determine, it was just because there was the national chairman of the party then, I think Adam Oshomole, who stood his ground, that this cannot fly. It was, how many, you have only 3, a state to have only 3 senators. A state to have, in Edo we have 8, some states have 20 House of Rep members. So you compare that to about let's even say 1,000 appointees of government, of the government. The pendulum is definitely going to switch in side of the government. In the run up to the last election, we had those kind of appointments too. So the bottom line is that what you are seeing in the interplay now is just the fight between governors and the National Assembly counterparts.
Okay, but the aspect where the president is saying that that part should be deleted, and again signing it. What do you think? Is that not contradictory?
I saw the president as being in a fix. If the president did not sign that bill into law the time he did, the 2023 elections may not have held. It's as serious as that.
Okay, but if the National Assembly fails to delay that part, doesn't it mean that by that signing, that part is taken into law?
With all due respect to our president, what the president said was just a statement. And that is not what we said of a president is a very powerful person. He's the most powerful individual in the country. So the fact that because of, why did the first question was, why did the bill have to wait till 2021 ending and then 2022 for it to be passed? Why was it not done in 2019? What was not done? That was when these people came to office. What was not done in 2020? What was not done at the beginning of 2021? Why is it at the end of 2021/2022? Okay. So the problem was, the truth is that, and for me, I am pained that so many beautiful things are going on, have become law in this country. The governors of Rivers State, Nyesom Wike, the governor of Abia State, Kezie Ikpeazu, the governor of Taraba State, Dearos Ishaku, these people would not have been governors today. If you go by what the tribunal and the Court of Appeal ruled, they would not have been, they lost in the Court of Appeal.
Okay.
And the tribunal. But if I could just pivot on this. And then, but why they remain governors for that, Supreme Court ruled that those technologies, the accreditation system, electronic accreditation system that INEC introduced, were not known to our laws. And you cannot use that because the case of overvoting was there in the case of this bill. So the point is that if it had not, that was how they remained governors. This electoral act now, more than anything, even the BVAS, which is the latest technology, they are all captured in the electoral act. So it is now part of our laws, among other things. So I don't think we should be.
Thank you for that articulation. I basically see that all of this, the clause 84 and the so much repos coming out from it could get to litigations, you know. But I wanted to finish on your point, Neville Obakedo, because what's the implication of the president signing that? What does it connote if the National Assembly fails to delete that part, that section, he said?
Well, I don't know when the National Assembly will delete that part.
If they will delete that.
If they will delete it, but we need to understand something. And this is not just a matter that concerns the president. It's a matter that concerns every individual, every organization in Nigeria, and every organ or level of government. I will take it from this angle. There's a judgment of the Supreme Court, and that judgment is concerning Ngozi Unoli and the management of the University of Nigeria Teaching Hospital Management Board. There was an act governing the appointment and the teaching hospital, including the board, how they will perform their functions. But in the course of performing her duties, somebody that Ngozi was supervising was said to have produced a syrup that kills some people, some young children. And the management did not follow the act, the provisions of the act, and they terminated the appointment. When she went to court, the court said, Honorable Justice Ogbuagu, I remember, he said, no organization, no individual can disregard the provisions of an act and the provisions of the Constitution. We went further there to say that any provisions of an act that is inconsistent with the Constitution should be set aside. It's null and void to the extent of its inconsistency.
Okay. So
now,
putting that
what
to
Mr.
the
President,
section.
yes, what Mr. President signed, if it is taken to court, is unknown to law, because there is an aspect in this provision, in this act, that violates Section 40 and Section 42 of the 1999 Constitution, which have to do with participation in the electoral process.
Okay.
What the Constitution has guaranteed, an act that is deriving its power from the Constitution, is legislating that act of existence. The entire document is null and void.
Oh.
Lawyers that knows their onions, who want to make money and make name, as soon as the president has signed the document to law, they should take the president and the National Assembly to court. And the court will say that that document is unknown to law, unless that aspect that offends the Constitution is expunged.
Thank you. You have a minute to respond to that.
Well, I'm not sure it is as clear as daylight, you know, the way my very senior colleague has mentioned, in the context that it is subject to the interpretation of, you know, a combined reading of both the reference sections of the Constitution and, of course, of the Electoral Act. In my own personal, because it is just an individual talking now, reading, it does not bar them, essentially, but they have to resign their appointments.
Okay.
That's what it does. They have to,
what of the notice?
As it is now.
I think they have to, if you want to contest an election. Because
if you want to participate in an election, as somebody that will be voting.
As a voting delegate.
Yes.
You know, the issue is not even about the election itself. It's about being a delegate in an election, in a party primary.
Because the Constitution says so.
No, because you did not say. That's what I'm saying. That
thank you.
Something that is open to interpretation.
Thank you. I think all of this boils down to having that in the interpretation from the judiciary.
Yes.
A lot has been done by the legislature and the executive. So it's now been pushed to the judiciary. Big thanks, thumbs up, Neville Obakedo, thumbs up to you for your articulation. Of course, Ibrahim Momo, we hope to do this again same time or another time where we're going to be extending the frontiers of this discussion. This is where we take caller up on this segment. It's the TMI. Don't you go away.